All right, good afternoon, everyone. So let's look at the questions that have appeared in mock 10 verbal paper. Now, firstly, if we look at it, we can see that there are four passages. The first passage is relatively longer, second passage is longer too, third passage is relatively longer, and the fourth passage is long too. So when we are faced with four longer passages, the first strategy that we must apply is to skim through each of the passages and look for any jargon words that we can find. Okay. Now, these jargon words can determine the theme and the genre of the passage. And if you're familiar with this theme or genre, you can select that passage first. So, in these four particular passages, if you look at the first passage, you can very clearly see that this is a business and economics passage. So if you have read enough business or economics articles, you'd find this very, very easy to understand. And the second passage, if you see, comes more from the humanities background. It's a little abstract in its writing style, so it could get a little harder for you to make conclusive evidences of this passage. The third one, again, if you see, this is clearly a literature passage. Although it's literature passage, this somewhat an easier passage. Okay. And the fourth one, if you see again, we are taking this from psychology. So overall, the RC section in this VRC paper can be taken as moderate to hard. And I think we've had what a total of 12, 14 questions. Just one moment. Right. So we've gotten a total of 14 questions in this particular mock from the RC section. And out of these 14 questions, one could, easily answer somewhere around, we can say 10 to 12 questions. And when I say easily answer, I mean to say you can take up to 1 minute to maximum of 2 minutes and finish answering that particular question. Now, RCs in this particular section, the minimum time that one could take to read this is 2 minutes 30 seconds. For a good reading, I think you should invest this much amount of time. But a maximum amount of time, which is like the deadline of what this RC could take up, is a maximum of 5 minutes. And if you are not able to finish that RC and understanding that RC in 5 minutes, I think you should consider leaving that RC in this particular paper. And apart from that, there were 8 verbal ability questions. As usual, we had 3 para jumbles, 3 para summaries, and 2 odd man out. The para jumbles were relatively easy because the theme was kind of very visible. The para summaries, well, if you read it hardly enough, you can identify the arguments, but it can be said as a moderate one. And the odd man out again were easy to moderate. So this was the structure of this particular mock. Now, amongst the 8 questions that are there over here in verbal ability section, one could target somewhere around 5 to 6 questions as correct. And out of the 14 RC questions there were, one could target around 10 to 11 questions as correct. So a good score in this particular paper would be 17 correct questions. A very good score. And a nice score, decent score in this paper would be 15 correct questions. Having said that, let's jump into the first passage. So if we look at this first passage, we can clearly see that he says few entrepreneurs start out with both a well-defined strategy and a plan for developing an organization that can achieve that strategy. In fact, many startups which don't have formal control systems, decision-making processes, or clear roles for employees can hardly be called organizations. The founders of such ventures improvise. They perform most of the important functions themselves and make decisions as they go along. So we can see that he's trying to define what an organizational structure is and how it relates to some kind of an entrepreneurial journey. Let me just erase this small part of this, please. Okay. Now, if we go forward, they say that they perform most of the important functions themselves. Okay, informality is fine as long as entrepreneurs aren't interested in building a large sustainable business. Now, this part is important for us to remember because this somehow looks like one of the arguments that they are making. Once that becomes their goal, however, they must start developing formal systems and processes. Such organizational infrastructures allows a venture to grow, but at the same time, it increases overhead and may slow decision making. How much infrastructure is enough and how much is too much? To match investments in infrastructure to the requirements of venture strategy, entrepreneurs must consider the degree to which their strategy depends on the following. So basically, we can say that the second part of this paragraph is going on and talking about the characteristics of a growing startup or a growing venture, as he has said. Correct? Yes. And we can also see that there's one line which could be an argument. So let's just start that up. Okay. I hope all of you are able to understand it till here. All right. Let's go to the second part of the passage. As a young venture grows, its founders will probably need to delegate many of the tasks that they used to perform. To get employees to perform those tasks competently and diligently, what is diligently? In a hardworking manner. Okay, competently and diligently, the founders may need to establish mechanisms to monitor employees and standard operating procedures and policies. Consider an extreme example. Randy and Debbie Fields pass along their skills and knowledge through software that tells employees in every Miss Fields cookie shop exactly how to make cookies and operate their business. The software analyzes data such as local weather conditions and the day of the week to generate hourly instructions about such matters as which cookies to bake, when to offer free samples, and when to reorder chocolate chips. Telling employees how to do their jobs, however, can stifle initiative. Companies that require frontline employees to act quickly and resourcefully might decide to focus more on outcomes than on behavior, using control systems that set performance targets for employees, compare results against objectives, and provide appropriate incentives. So now, if we look at this particular paragraph, we can see that as the venture grows, people are expected to delegate a few tasks. So I'm just writing the ideas from this paragraph over here. So as the venture grows, people delegate. Okay, so let me just write delegate over here. Okay. Now, what happens over here when very strict instructions are given? Now, this can stifle, what did he say? Initiative. That means people might not take any more initiative. So what does that do? That reduces creativity or satisfaction. Okay. So what happens over here? So companies that require frontline employees to act resourcefully and quickly might decide to focus more on outcomes than on behavior. That means he's saying that companies which want people to actually do good work, they don't care about how they are or when they are purchasing these things. They believe in the outcomes. Okay, did I get a profit out of what this person has done for me or not? Now using control systems that set targets to employees. Okay, instead of saying ki this is the objective, you have to do this much. Instead of saying that, if we set targets to the employees that okay, this is what we need to reach, you have to go till here, then we can get appropriate incentives, is what he is trying to tell us. Okay, I hope till this part all of you guys can understand. Okay. Now here, in a small scale startup, everyone does a little bit of everything. But as business grows and tries to achieve economies of scale and scope, employees must be assigned clearly defined roles and grouped into appropriate organizational units. An all-purpose workshop employee, for example, might become a machine tool operator who is a part of manufacturing unit. Specialized activities need to be integrated by, for example, creating the position of a general manager who coordinates the manufacturing and marketing functions, or through systems that are designed to measure and reward employees for cross-functional cooperation. Okay. Poor integrative mechanisms are reasons why geographic expansion, vertical integration, broadening of product lines, and other strategies to achieve economies of scale and scope often fail. Cash-strapped businesses that are trying to grow need good systems to forecast and monitor the availability of funds. Outside sources of capital, such as banks, often refuse to advance funds to companies with weak controls and organizational infrastructure. If entrepreneurs hope to build a company that can sell, they must start preparing early. Public markets and potential acquirers like to see an extended history of well-kept financial records and controls to reassure them of soundness of business. Now, in this last particular paragraph, what's he trying to say? He's trying to say that when the organization is small, everyone does everything. Okay? Everyone does everything. But once the organization grows, okay, people need to become more specialized. Yes. Now, why do people need to become more specialized? Because that improves productivity. Now, what else is he talking about over here? If we are, yes, if we are having some kind of poor integrative mechanisms, so if we are having poor integrative mechanisms, then we cannot expand in any way. Okay, not even geographically, not even in other products or in any sense. And when there are cash-strapped businesses, that means businesses which do not have a lot of money. Okay, when they are trying to go for taking money from banks and all also, they prefer banks or other investors, prefer companies with good financial records or clean financial records. Okay, so this is what he's trying to say. Now, out of all of this, I'm sure that you've understood the main idea of the passage is that a venture should start being structurally organized. Right from the very starting if it wants to succeed. Okay, I hope all of you understood this particular passage. Right? All right. So let's now go to the question. The question asks, which of the following statements is the author of the passage most likely to agree with? Now, if we are looking A, Founders are only performance driven and they use several control measures to achieve this end. Now, the author is mostly talking about startups who do not have such founders. So the author is not going to accept this. This is going to be an opposite answer. B. Segregated specialized activities are not required in the initial stages of a startup's life cycle. Again, the author says you should be organized right from the starting if you want to do something. So this also is an opposite answer. C. Early preparation of sound long-term strategy is desirable if entrepreneurs wish to establish a scalable. Okay, so there's a C missing over here. Scalable business model. Yes, this is what is the main idea of the passage. So the author is ready to accept this. D. Weak structural decisions can be improvised and can be re-established at later stage in the development of an organized way. So see, the author basically taunts people who are doing this process, right? So again, this becomes an opposite answer. So our correct answer should be C. All right? Yeah. Now, the second question, the author of the passage will most likely agree with each of the following, except which of the following statements. Okay. So three of them must be statements that the author would agree with. One is the statement that the author would not agree with. All right. So what kind of statements won't the author agree with? Statements that are opposite to the main idea, the author will not agree with. Preordained jobs with detailed procedures make it easier for the employees to work. Now, he's saying that jobs which are very fixed and very, very restrictive are going to make it easier for the employees to work. Now, I don't want you to put in your own bias into this. The author wants to make sure that employees have initiative, correct? And that the employees need to decide their own thing when they are focusing on outcomes, correct? So in that case, the author would not agree with A because this becomes an opposite answer to what the author wants, which means it's one of the right answers for us. Okay, let's look at B. The right incentives in consumer facing companies are derived from clearly defined aims. Now, this is kind of true. This is what he said over here, where we are requiring frontline employees. Okay, over there, if you are having, set performance targets, then you can get nice results. So this is true. The author is likely to agree to this. Now, what about C? Initiatives taken by employees needs to be encouraged by the companies. That's also true. Incentives that employees earn are an improvement in performance are directly, again, something that the author would agree with. So since he says except, our answer would be A. All right. So now in this third question, he says none of the following statements can be inferred from the passage except that. So one statement can be inferred from the passage, and apart from that statement, nothing else can be inferred. Okay. So what is that statement that should be inferred or can be inferred? It should be definitely on the same lines as main idea if you're inferring it from the passage, right? So clear-cut positions for employees is a prerequisite for any small business. Can you infer this? No. He does not say that you should have clear-cut positions. He says that you should have an organizational structure. Okay. Uh, Establishing working procedure is a standard rule for small business. Again, no. But he says it should be. It is not. That's why it should be. So neither this nor this. Prediction of results is beneficial. Again, this very vague. So not this either. Weak organizational edifice needs to be dismantled. Yes, it needs to be broken and restructured to grow into big. True. So this is what we can see from the entire main idea of the passage. So D will be our answer. Okay. All right. Now, in the fourth question, he asks which of the following conclusions can be drawn from the passage as a whole. So, simply speaking, he's asking us for the main idea only this time. So, very nicely put, all the four questions of this passage would have been easily solved if you understood the main idea of this particular passage. With growth, companies should work on delegating, so this becomes a partial scope choice. Knowledge and skills that an organization gains during its initial years. Again, this becomes a partial scope choice. Cross-cultural organization, okay, operational integration is rewarded. Now, this again, it's not even a partial scope choice, this is just an inconsistent answer. He has used the same terms inside the passage, but in a very, very different outcome. Okay, so D is your correct answer. D is the same as main idea of the passage. So D will be your right answer. All right. So now let's look at the second passage. This passage is from humanities section. Let me first clearly erase the screen. Right. So in this passage, we can see that uh, we are talking about fishes having faces and how dogs have faces, animals have faces, and later on we understand that this face actually is a metaphor for us to compare them to what sentient beings are. Okay, so the passage goes like this. Do fish have faces? In one sense, the question is trivial. Sorry. A 10-year-old would likely answer yes. After all, a fish has eyes, a mouth, and what can pass as a snout. It seems to have all the essentials of a face, but there are far-reaching consequences to this answer, and it needs to be considered carefully. Whether we perceive an animal to have what the existential philosopher Emmanuel Levinas in 1961 called the face of the other is crucial in determining the moral status we grant it. So what does this actually talk about? This talking about how exactly a particular philosopher spoke about the face of the other, a concept called the face of the other. And this face of the other means having a face would mean that you are having some kind of moral, uh, how do I say, moral endowment in yourself. Okay. So we recognize things with face means we understand that they are sentient. There's some kind of a moral endowment. Okay. Uh, so by face, Levinas meant living presence. That is a kind of expression of personhood. Faces and morality, it seems, are intimately bound up with one another, as the philosophers Mark Cockleberg and David Gunkel have noted. We often give dogs this kind of face, as evidenced by the individual names we bestow on them and their closeness of our to our lives. So basically, what does this space mean? The space is a living presence or an expression of a personhood. Okay. So anyone who has a face, we can say that they're a person. And usually, where can we see this face? One example is given. That example is of a dog. Okay. Is that clear? Right. So next, what is this? Right. So yeah, we grant them an existential status that leads to their inclusion in our moral community and an assignment of rights and protections, occasionally approaching those we afford to other people. That means just like some rights and protections that are there for some other people, for a few people maybe, but they're there for some people. The same rights and everything we are trying to give to dogs also. Why? Because we have given them a name, we made them have that face. Okay, dogs have the face of other. In that sense, are we ready to say that fish have faces? The child's answer notwithstanding, the fish are seldom, if ever, assigned faces in this manner. Why? Put more broadly, what influences whether we do or do not see the face of the other in an animal? From an aesthetic standpoint, two factors stand out. One, our human predisposition towards cuteness and cuddliness. Okay. So we are basically looking at how cute and cuddly is that animal before we are granting it some kind of protection and rights. Okay. Fish do not much benefit from either of those. Perhaps the occasional person finds the occasional fish cute, and some species, such as pufferfish, might seem more expressive than others, such as the blobfish. But the generally scales and slime count strongly against cuteness and cuddliness. So because they have that scales on their body and slime that is coming out of their body, they usually not considered as cute or cuddly. However, there are also explicit cognitive factors that influences the moral status as they assign to animals. Okay, so sentience is the most important of them. And by this, I mean the minimal capacity to have direct subjective experience of the qualities associated with sensations and accompanying affectual states. Okay, very big sentence, very complicated sentence. It looks like a sentence that Shashi Tharoor would say, but what does it even mean? He sees that the minimal capacity to have direct subjective experience. That means you should be having some capacity at least to experience something, okay, uh, subjectively. That means by yourself. And what are these somethings of the qualities associated with sensations and accompanying affectual states? Okay, so what are these things that you should be able to experience? These are the qualities associated with sensations. That means whatever you're sensing and how you feel because of what you're sensing. So that accompanying affectual states means how you feel because of what you are, experiencing. All right. So more simply put, sentience is the ability to have the feel of a sensory um experience. Okay. Because of this, sentient beings have the capacity to suffer, and it is this ability that intuitively affects the moral status. Essays from Jeremy Bentham in the 18th century to Peter Singer in the 20th century have forcefully argued that the capacity of an animal to suffer demands that it be given a standing in our moral community. So the question of moral states is tied up in the question of sentience, its definition, and its application. So now, when we are looking at that particular part of this paragraph, we can very clearly say that unless someone who has some sentience in them, only then I can say that they have that other phase. And the question comes: Are fish sentient? Are dogs sentient? Are birds sentient? Are any of these really sentient? Okay. So social psychologists have found that humans who eat meat attribute significantly fewer indicators of sentience to animals that end up on their plate than do vegetarians. So if you are asking a non-vegetarian whether they eat chicken and whether they think chicken is an intelligent animal, or if they think chicken is an animal that's worth living and all. So people who are non-vegetarians might say that no, chicken is not an animal worth living. But that is mostly due to their dietary preferences. Okay, are we all clear with this? This denial naturally allows the human carnivore to reproduce cognitive dissonance. So if I just tell that no, I want only vegetarian. Okay, I don't want non-vegetarian. I will have to think about, okay, what is this non-vegetarian guy eating? Why is he killing animals and all? But if I say, okay, I'm also okay with non-vegetarian, then there's no problem, right? Gotta let that go. Yes, so cognitive dissonance is thinking about one thing and feeling something else. Okay, you believe in something, but you're not able to use that thing. You'll have to use something else. Okay. Now, if the animal is not sentient, it does not know suffering. Excuse me. This perception has been supported by some scientists and philosophers such as Peter Carruthers, who ground their arguments against the sentience on two claims. The first is that all behaviors exhibited by a fish are either reflexive or complex reflexes to warrant the application of sentience and all that is necessary for sentience. And since the fish is lacking a neocortex, there cannot be hearing, but Both what? But both these arguments are false. Finds out that fish are sentient and they do have the lack of, okay, they do have the face of the other. Okay. So over here, what's he trying to say? He's trying to say that, social psychologists have found out that people who do not eat meat care about animals a little more, and they think that they are more sentient. But for someone to be sentient, there are two things again. First thing, their, what do you say, reflexes or behaviors or whatever should be similar to how their reflexes behaviors are in the normal state. And secondly, what happens over here is that since fish lack neocortex, the argument against is that the fish cannot be of what is this? Sentient creatures. Okay. All right. So I hope you guys understood the passage. So the first question says the author mentioned dogs in the second paragraph to show that. Now, over here, if we look carefully, the first option says while dogs can have individual names, fishes cannot be given names. Now, it is not to show the distinction between whether or not fishes or dogs can be given names. The author mentions about dogs. Why? Because we want to see, okay, that because dogs are given face, they are having some kind of a human rights or protections. Okay, because of that, they are a higher moral creature. Okay, so B fits our reasoning. See, always remember you should do some kind of pre-thinking before you're answering that particular question. Only then you will be able to accurately match your answers to the options. Okay, right. So the second question is the main concern of the author is, okay, now in this particular option, if we look at A, differing views of scientists and philosophers in the realm of sentience, this becomes a partial scope choice. This is not really a broad choice which covers the whole thing. So this is not becoming the main idea, right? Whether all animals have the face of the other, again, if we are talking about whether all animals, this becomes an extreme answer. Yes, moral dilemma in describing the face of animals. Now, although this, looks clear, the whole passage is only about fishes, to be honest. So the right answer should be C. Okay. Now, if we move forward in this particular question, he talks about the author, sorry, he talks about the author would consider each of the following as counterexamples to the views of scientists and philosophers, such as Peter Carruthers. Okay, Carruthers. This is over here, right? Yes. Okay. Except what? Okay. So his question basically says, which of the following could be considered as a counterexample to the views of scientists and philosophers? So we know Peter ideas, and from this Peter's ideas, we have to go on an opposite basis. Okay, so goldfish and red-tailed split fin can be tricked with optical fibers. They can also fill in optical absences, possibly based on prior experience. Now, that is just responses to the environment, right? So he would agree to this. Just one moment. Okay. So if we understand this question correctly, very simply speaking, he's saying that there are philosophers like Peter who have certain ideas. Okay, counter examples to these ideas would be negative of these ideas. Okay, and we are looking for an answer that is except these counter examples. So negative of that idea is nothing but the positive of that idea. So same as the ideas. Okay, are we getting the point? Now, nowhere in the passage has he mentioned about them having excellent spatial and long-term memories. They said that some are mammals lack neocortex, and neocortex is important for all these. Okay, same is the case. So these would be ideas which are opposite of all of it. So goldfish and red-tailed split fin can be tricked with optical illusions. They can also fill in optical absences. Now this is nothing like complex response to the environment or anything. So this all these three are okay. All these three are something that you can not see clearly from the passage. Okay. So the right answer will be D, none of these. Okay. Now, what is this question talking about? Sorry. The author argues his point of moral status for fish mainly by doing what? Now, if we think about what is the author doing for arguing his main point of moral status, we can see that he's trying to say that it's not only lacking, you know, this part of neocortex. It's not only that response to environment and all. It's not only these things which are making them non-sentient, but fishes can feel and suffer, which is what makes them moral. This is the argument that we can see from the entire range of this passage. So that option is very clearly seen in A. So our answer should be A. Okay. So now if we look at the third particular passage, the following speech was delivered by Caitlin, a Roman politician and revolutionary, to his soldiers on the eve of the battle, which resulted in his defeat and death. So this guy basically died in this battle, but he gave a speech to his soldiers before he died, and this is that speech. I am well aware, soldiers, that words cannot inspire courage, and that a spiritless army cannot be rendered active, or a timid army valiant, by the speech of its commander. Whatever courage is in the heart of a man, whether from nature or from habit, so much will be shown by him on the field, and on him whom neither glory nor danger can move. Exhortation is bestowed in vain. You, at the same time, my reasons for the course which I have adopted. Oh, sorry. For terror in his breast stops his ears. I've called you together, however, to give you few instructions and to explain to you at the same time my reasons for the course which I have adopted. So basically, he's saying that, you know, I cannot say any words to inspire courage to people who are already spiritless. Okay. So if you are not having the spirit to fight, there's nothing that I can say that will give you courage, that will give you any kind of inspiration. Whatever courage is there in the heart of the man It comes from either you being courageous directly, normally you are born courageous, or you made a habit of it. So just by one speech, nothing will change is what he's trying to say. Okay. Now I have called you together here to give you a few instructions and to explain to you at the same time my reasons for the course that I have adopted. So he's just telling us why he has gathered all those soldiers at that particular place. You all know, soldiers, how severe a penalty the inactivity and cowardice of Lentulus has brought upon himself and us, and how, while waiting for the reinforcements from the city, I was unable to march into Gaul. In what situation our affairs now are, you all understand as well as myself. Two armies of the enemy, one on the side of Rome and the other on the side of the Gaul, oppose our progress, while the want of corn and of other necessaries prevent us from remaining, however strongly we may desire to remain in our present position. That means there are two armies on each side which are stopping them from moving forward, but they can't stay there because they need some kind of provisions. Okay. Uh, yes. Whither, whithersoever we would go, we must open a passage with our swords. I conjure you, therefore, to maintain a brave and resolute spirit, and to your liberty, and remember when you advance to battle, that on your own right hands depends riches, honor, and glory. With the enjoyment of your liberty and of your country, if we conquer, all will be safe. We shall have provisions in abundance, and the colonies and corporate towns will open gates to us. But if we lose the victory through the want of courage, those same places will turn against us. For neither place nor friend will protect him whom his arms have not protected. That means if you can't protect yourself, no one will be able to protect you. Apart from that, what does he say in this? He says that if we win, we'll have a lot of provisions forever. I mean, not ever, but for a longer time. Okay. And everyone will welcome us. All the corporate towns and all the, places will welcome us. But if we lose, then it's all over. We won't have any protection. No one will accept us. Besides soldiers, the same exigency does not press upon our adversaries as what is this? As presses upon us. We fight for our country, for our liberty, for our life. They contend for what but little concerns them, the power of a small party. Attack them, therefore, with so much greater confidence and call to your mind the achievements of old. We might, with the utmost ignominy, have passed the rest of our days in exile. Some of you, after losing your property, might have waited at Rome for assistance from others. But because such a life to the men of spirit was disgusting and unendurable, you resolved upon your present course. That means, what is this? He's saying that, you know, we have to attack them with so much greater confidence because we have so much more to lose than them. We are fighting for our country and everything, but they are just fighting for a small party. Okay. Party అంటే ఇప్పుడు party చేసుకునే party కాదు, a small faction. So we have so much more to lose than the other soldiers. So we should fight in greater confidence. Okay. You can try and remember everything that happened in the previous fights, and we must, look at ourselves. Yes, and he's saying that we are all come here after losing our property and all that things that we had in Rome, and we waited for help from Rome, but no one came to help. Okay, and a life like that was very, very demeaning, very, very undesirable to people of spirit. So we came to try and fight for a liberty. Okay. So this is all they had. He's trying to motivate them. All right. Now to hope for safety in flight when you have turned away from the enemy. Sorry. Wait. Yeah. If you wish to quit it, you must exert all your resolution, for none but conquerors have exchanged war for peace. To hope for safety in a flight, when you have turned away from the enemy, the arms by which the body is defended is indeed madness. In a battle, Those who are most afraid are always in most danger. But courage is equivalent to a rampart. When I contemplate you, my soldiers, and when I consider your past exploits, a strong hope of victory animates me. That means he's saying that in a fight, you cannot expect to turn away from your enemy. Okay, don't show his hand, don't show your hands to him in a way that you've just folded your hands and you've turned aside, so that you can just think of it way right. That enemy will definitely kill you. There's nothing you can do to save yourself over there. Okay, but you are expecting that that enemy should not kill you. That is stupidity. That is idiocy. Right. The same way when the author is thinking about these soldiers, he's saying that when I'm thinking about you, I'm thinking about all the past wars that you have won and everything. And that spirit is somewhere moving me, animates me, moves me. Okay. Your spirit, your age, your valor gives me confidence to say nothing of necessity, but should fortune be unjust to your valor, that means if you were honest, courageous, and you went in to fight, but somehow you lost your lives, please do not let it be like being butchered like the cattle. Okay, instead of just being dragged and cut like cattle, cut like goats and all that. Okay, at least die like men, die fighting like men. Okay, and leave your enemies a bloody and mournful victory. That means give them a victory that they are really sad about. That means they should lose so many people. Okay, that your victory, they should not feel like it's a victory at all. Okay, are we getting this point ready? Is this clear? Okay. Now, what is the first question? Why, according to Caitlin, should his soldiers fight with greater confidence? Now, let's just think about the passage. If we are looking at the passage, it's very, very simple. There are some soldiers, okay? These soldiers are maybe over here. From this side, one army is coming. From this side, another army is coming. And maybe here, there are provisions. So these people have to go like this, armies have to be like this. Okay. Now, these fellows' army is less in number compared to these fellows' army. Okay. So this is the entire situation. Clear? The only reason these people are fighting is for their what? Liberty, life, and food. Correct? What are these fellows fighting for? What are these all guys fighting for? Some kind of a small party. Yes. So very clearly I can say that the stakes were way higher for these people than for these people. Yes. So the right answer should be C. Now, what according to Catalin amounts to madness in a battle? Now, this again becomes a little, tricky because this is a specific detailed question which we'll have to infer a little bit from as well. Okay, just give me one moment. Right, so this is a specific detail type question. And if we're looking at this particular specific detail type question, uh, we can see him talk about, you know, madness when he's, where is this part about madness? Sorry. Hmm, this part, right? So why is he talking about something like madness in the battle? Because he's saying to hope for safety in a fight when you have turned away from the enemy, the arms by which your body is defended. That means you're surrendering in the fight and you're hoping for a safety. So this will be the most appropriate answer. Okay. Now, when we're looking at the third question, the speech made by Catlin is primarily meant to send a clear message to his soldiers that. Now, if we look at this in a positive manner, this becomes a main idea question. Okay. So if this is the main idea question, then we can very clearly try and understand that this main idea for the passage is from Caitlin to the soldiers. So why did this guy give this speech? Comes from these lines. Okay, the first 4 5 lines. Yes. And what is that idea? The idea is that although although they know that they're going to lose, there's no other choice but to fight. Okay. So the most closest answer to that is C. Are we getting it? And the last sentence again, the phrase to say nothing of the necessity which makes even cowards brave. Now, what is this and where can we see this particular what do you say line? You can see this again somewhere. Where is it? That is to say nothing of necessity. Saw this somewhere in the passage. Let me just pause this recording, search for this and get back. Yes, so that particular line is in the last but second line of the paragraph. So that is over here. Right, to say nothing of necessity, which makes even cowards brave to prevent the numbers of the enemy from surrounding us. Our confined situation is sufficient. So what does this aim at? Now, very clearly, we can say that this wants to tell that people are already brave. Okay, to say nothing of necessity, which makes even cowards brave. That means I don't need to say anything of necessity that makes cowards brave. You guys are already brave. Okay, I don't need to tell something to make you brave. That's what's the meaning. So, which is nothing but our option A. Okay, right. So, when we are looking at this particular passage, again, we can see that we are talking about how dogs and humans share a bond, right? So, dogs likely for the first were the first domesticated animal, and humans share a strong bond that stretches back thousands of years. Over time, dogs were selected for traits that made them more sociable, loyal, and cooperative. Early on, domesticated canines proved useful in hunting, but nowadays they occupy a wide range of specialized roles, such as search and rescue, agriculture, police, and scent detection. Their ability to fulfill these roles hinges for the most part on their responsiveness to human social cues. Often, these cues are verbal commands and basic utterances during various contexts, but also non-verbal cues such as gestures. So basically, what's he saying? He's saying that the relationship that humans and dogs have stretches over thousands of years. Okay, and over the time, that means initially dogs are not like this, but now they've been more sociable, loyal, and cooperative. Okay. So early on, the canines which were domesticated, they proved very useful in hunting. Okay. Whereas now they are used in a more specialized role. Okay. So what are these specialized roles ante? Like search and rescue, agriculture, police, scent detection. These are the kind of roles that they are used in. Now, How are they able to do all these roles is the main thing. Okay. Here they are all able to do these roles because they are able to follow human social cues. So that becomes of prime importance to us. Okay. Often these cues are verbal commands and basic utterances during various contexts, but sometimes these can be non-verbal commands also. Okay. So as early as the 1920s, scientists have sought to assess dogs' ability to comprehend human speech. One study from 1928 documented the ability of a fellow, a young male German Shepherd, to respond to verbal commands uttered by his owner. Fellow could recognize 68 words and phrases, including phrases such as go outside and wait for me. More recently, a 2004 study found that Rico, a border collie, could identify and retrieve over 200 items, such as various different balls and stuffed toys, when the owner uttered each item's unique name. So he's now giving examples. Okay, so if we are looking at it from here, he's just giving examples of what scientists have done. Now, these studies show that the dogs can respond consistently and differently to spoken words and phrases, something not at all surprising even to the first time dog owners. But the Canadian researchers wanted to investigate more closely and more empirically the extent to which typical dogs respond to words. Fellow, Rico, and most other canines are dogs, okay? So, canines involved in the similar studies were very well trained, for instance. Okay. So, in order to quantify the number of words a dog could comprehend, the researchers employed virtually the same tool the psychologists used to assess infants' understanding and development of early language, based on parent reported checklist called the MacArthur Bates Communicative Development Inventory. Okay. So a total of 165 owners of variety of dog breeds were surveyed about the different words and phrases that their pets seemed to understand. Each owner was also asked questions about themselves that were relevant to the study, such as dog training experience and household member composition, as well as about their dogs. So these researchers went there, they used some kind of a method that's used usually with children, infants, very small children, because just like dogs, even children cannot tell what they know, what they don't know. It's their parents that can tell, okay, he does this or she does this, she does not do this, like that. Okay, right. And then what do we look at? Um, yes, so on an average, dog owners identify 89 terms that their pets responded to consistently, half of which were classed as commands. Okay. There were outliers. Outliers means extreme cases. Of course, with one clever dog reporting to respond to 215 words, the least responsive dog responded only to 15 words. The current study takes an important first step towards developing an instrument that makes it possible to identify which words might most likely be responded to by dogs. Okay. So they're trying to find out exactly how which words is a dog most likely to respond to. Okay. Although research on dogs' responses to words exists, much of it has been limited in scope or sample size. Now, what does this mean? This means that people either teach certain commands only, or there are only certain types of dogs which are taught commands at all. Okay. Now, for example, if you take a street dog, a stray dog, and try to find out how many words does it know, versus any random dog which is which is just born, but it has a heredity of being in training and all. So that dog is more likely to learn words than this dog, right? So like that, the sample size differences might also come up. The current study is consistent with the existing approach, suggesting that dogs may be particularly adept at responding to commands rather than object words. The researchers wrote in their study, the sorry, the researchers cautioned, however, that these results do not prove that dogs actually understand the meaning of the words. Okay, they could respond to various words uttered by humans due to operant or classical conditioning, such as the present in basic dog training. So now we can get another idea from here that dogs understand rewards but not words. Okay, all right. Now, dogs may also learn to associate certain sounds that form words with events or objects more passively by learning the association between them through repeated pairings, a process scientists call statistical learning. With additional research, our tool could help. Our tool could become an efficient, effective, and economical research instrument for mapping out some of their competencies and perhaps help predict the early potential of individual dogs for various professions they added. So basically, what are they trying to do? They're just trying to see, what is there in a dog to make it respond the way it is. The how it will be used and all is a secondary thing. Okay. So yes, they want to map out the competencies of the dog. Okay, so what is the first question? Let me erase the ink on the screen. Yes, so what's the first question here? The researchers cautioned, however, that these results do not prove that dogs actually understand the meaning of the words. Which of the following, if true, would help most strengthen this statement of the author? Now, which of the following statements, if true, will make us understand that yes, dogs don't actually understand the meaning of the words? Good, okay. Now, dogs accurately identify each unique item after being given rigorous training. No, that means they understand the meanings. No, right? So definitely not this. Dogs respond identically to hearing names of different items as the reward associated. Yeah. So this means that dogs only know about the reward, not the words. No. So this means the same as this. Okay. Dogs chosen for search and rescue operations respond differently to the words. No. So this means that they respond to different words differently. The response of dogs was more accurate when the association between rewards and the words uttered was removed. Now, it does not matter if we have the association or not. Okay. We just want to see if they're able to distinguish between words, and only in B, they are not able to. Yes. So the author of this passage will agree with all the following statements, except some dogs are significantly more capable. I'm sorry. So some dogs are significantly more capable than other dogs because they are better classically conditioned. Yes, I think that is what we are getting from this part of it, right? That more smarter a dog, more is the conditioning. So A can be understood. B, dogs that are selected for certain professions may be more adept at acquiring classical conditions. True again from the same logic. Okay, the greater the reward associated with the command, the more is the likelihood. Yes, that is the process of classical conditioning again. Dogs will respond more vigorously to object words than to simple command. No. Now this is opposite because most words learned by dogs are what? Command words. Correct. So if most words learned by dogs are command words, they are definitely going to be looking at command words and not object words. Okay. So our answer should be D. Clear? Okay. So now in the verbal ability section, the first question is about para summaries. And he says there will always be produced native talent, vast power of influencing mankind, united with restless, aspiring, and insatiate ambition. That means not satisfiable. And this talent will be unfolded in greater proportion as common education is more generally diffused. The question then is not whether such talent shall or shall not exist. The question practically is whether these rare endowments, okay, shall be cultivated and disciplined and cautioned and directed by the lessons of past wisdom, or whether they shall be allowed to grow up in reckless and headstrong arrogance. So basically, what he's saying from this part is there is talent, okay, but will you channelize this talent or will you leave it anyway? Is what we really need to look at. And who should channelize it? The wisdom of past. That's what he is saying. Okay. Uh, it's merely a question whether the extraordinary talented bestowed upon society by our Creator shall be a blessing or a curse to us and to our children. That's all. So, yes, here what he's saying talent left rudderless and unguided by experience is potentially potentious. True, makes sense. We can keep this as one of the options. Diffusion of extra, because what this means is that if you talent which is not guided, okay, so rudderless and unguided is just you can think of it as not guided, okay, by experience, that means past wisdom is potentially portentous. So it's a recipe for disaster in a way, if I were to say. Okay. Diffusion of extraordinary talent can instill arrogance in a society that summarily forgets its humble beginnings. Again, nowhere have we spoken about how people are forgetting how humble they are and all that. It's not happening. So this is an out of scope choice. Proliferation of native talent in society can prove to be both advantages and disadvantages to society and progeny. Yes, true. We completely agree, but it's a partial scope choice because he's not talked about. It depends on what advantages and disadvantages to society on what basis. Okay. Next one, native talent is like a child. It needs proper grooming, cultivation, and discipline. Okay, so when he's saying that native talent is like a child, it needs cultivation and all, that's true. But he's not talking about what if it doesn't happen, which is also an idea that's in the passage. Okay, so the right answer will be A. Okay, are we clear? So let's move forward. Now the second question is a para jumble. Yes, it's a para jumble, and what are we talking about over here? We are talking about uh, during colonialism, introducing European values meant specifically introducing European bourgeois values. European bourgeois is middle class values, as it's been indicated by many scholars when tracing the formation of theories of race. Okay, fair enough. It's known that colonialism was declared as a civilizing mission in which political forces joined religious missionaries to bring the light of progress to the dark continent. The civilizing mission targeted. Okay, the moment we see this, this was declared as a civilizing mission. Okay, just give me 1 minute. This was declared as a civilizing mission. And here we say the civilizing mission. So if we see a and the, this connection we can form immediately of articles. Yes, first indefinite articles come, then comes definite articles. So obviously I can say that 2 and 3 is one pair that I'm making. Yes. And apart from that, I can also say that uh, so this was talking about tracing the formation of theories of race. And here we are embedding those racial theories with something else. So I can also say that 1 and 4 are joined together. Okay, so this becomes another mandatory pair. Now the only two options that I'm going to look at is 1 4 2 3 correct or 2 3 1 4 correct. Okay. Now amongst these two options, very clearly I can say that which option? I think two. Option two is talking about how colonialism was declared and all. So this is the most generic statement. Two is the most generic statement. Hence, we are going with answer of 2, 3, 1, 4. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, if we look at this particular question, the passage given below is followed by four alternative summaries. Choose the option that best captures the essence of the passage. Now, as far as superior knowledge and talent confer on their professor, a natural character of privilege to control his associates and exert an influence on the direction of the general affairs in the community. The free and the natural action of that privilege is best secured by perfectly free democratic process, which will abolish all artificial distinctions and preventing the accumulation of any social obstacles to advancement. What does this even mean? See, when he's saying that as far as any superior knowledge and anything is there, okay, and talent confer on their possessor a natural charter of privilege to control his associates. It means that you having more knowledge. Let's say that there are two people. Okay, one has more knowledge than the other. This person exerts some kind of influence. This person somehow controls the other person. Okay. And that is the general affairs of the community, about the general affairs of what has happened, or what's going on in the community and all that. The free and natural action of that privilege is best secured by perfectly free democratic system. Okay. Now this will abolish all artificial distinctions. That means distinctions which are not real, which we have made for ourselves, and preventing the accumulation of any social obstacles to advancement, will permit the free development of every germ of talent wherever it may chance to exist. That means wherever there is talent, that person will grow if we remove these distinctions. Okay. So what can be the meaning of all of this? It could mean that all these abilities of good talent, of great talent, this can grow in an environment which is free, which is democratic, okay, which is not restrictive in nature. Okay, so that is what's the meaning of this particular passage, which comes out from option D. Okay, now in this particular passage, the superior abilities anywhere can manifest themselves. So he's just saying that only, free development of every germ of talent wherever it may chance exist. Means any small speck of talent also it should be able to do. The superior abilities anywhere manifest themselves organically in an uninhibited, so non-restrictive environment. Okay, so D will be the right answer. Now, when we're moving on to the next one, this again a para jumble, and this is specifically an easier para jumble, to be honest. Okay, why? Because we are looking at how is cultural settings and cultural influences of a particular profession, or a cultural influence of certain people in a particular profession influencing the overall care. Okay, so here if you look at communication between doctors or health authorities and the population is important for the implementation of public health policies, is the most generic line there is. Okay, that's the most generic line. Okay, so I think from here, if you look at the whole thing together, the concomitants can be formed between, I think, immediately to look at 3 and 4, because here we are talking about linguistic, cultural, and ideological differences. These are all posing difficulty for population to understand the authorities. And then he says, even when the government and people have no cultural conflicts. So first of all, these things are causing some kind of a challenge for people to understand. But wherever there are not also, right? So 3 and 4 becomes a mandatory pair. Now amongst these two, we see that 2 is the most generic one. Correct. So naturally, we are going to go with 2, 1, 3, and a 4. Okay. Yes. Now, when we're looking at these questions, this is talking about the odd one out or the odd man out question. Correct. So 4 of these we should be able to make a para jumble out of, and one of which we should be able to remove, if I'm not wrong. Yes. So which one can we remove? One will soon find out what the finance minister has in his mind and how he reacts. The way things are moved, RBI can only make peripheral impact on the currency. Will it swallow a bit of its pride and soften a bit on GARR, differing and diluting the rules? Only the government, if it musters the courage, can. make a difference? Right. So very clearly, if you're looking at it, uh, I think B should be the first statement. Okay. And then comes A, then comes E, and then comes C. Or wait. I think the last two, not entirely sure it's A, C, E, C. Let's actually see it. B and A is very sure. The way things have moved, RBI can only make peripheral impact on the currency. One will soon find out what finance minister has in his mind and how he reacts. Okay. Okay. So in fact, we don't need to go with B and A. Right. So we could also go with this part. See, my logic is that when we are saying deferring it or deferring, diluting the rules, okay, will it swallow a bit of its pride? This it is not the RBI, this it is the government. Okay. So naturally, C and E or E and C are a mandatory pair. We just need to make sure that we are forming the right mandatory pairs. So if I were to say only the government, if it musters the courage, can make a difference, will it swallow a bit of its pride and soften on the jeer or different? Okay, right. So now it becomes a little bit more clear. The first statement is definitely B, and after that comes E, okay, C, and then A. This makes it a very neatly rounded story where the way things have moved, RBI can only make peripheral impact on the currency, and now we are not going to talk about RBI anymore. Only the government, if it musters the courage, can make a difference. Will it swallow a bit of its pride and soften a bit on GAR, differing it or diluting the rules? One will soon find out what the finance minister has in his mind and how he reacts. So that is how it's going to go ahead. But anyways, so this is not a parajumble question. This is an odd man out question. So very clearly we can see that D option is the odd man out. Okay. Yeah. Now what about here? Here again, we are talking about some kind of a new nutrient. Okay, some kind of protein that's come out. Yes. So here also, if we go with chronology first, very clearly I can see that this is the most generic statement. And in fact, the one that comes up the oldest in terms of chronology as well. Right? So B will be the first statement. Now in B, what are we trying to say? We are trying to say that several years ago, Arla, one of the largest dairy companies, was set out to create a product to take advantage of an inviting opportunity. Now, what was this inviting opportunity? This inviting opportunity was that people were increasingly seeking out protein as a healthful nutrient. Okay. So very clearly, we can say that B and A are together. Okay. Now, when we are looking at C and D, he's talking about whey protein has a milky taste and separated from milk's natural fat and sugar, it has a dry mouthfeel. And here in D, we are talking about isolating whey protein from whey and adding it to clear drinks could make them more appealing to consumers. Okay, so clearly here we are looking at the problem being the flavor. And in this statement, he is talking about the flavor. So naturally, we can see that BA, DC will be our answer because DC will be the mandatory pair number 2. Okay, right. Now, let's look at the next question. Here also we have to go with the odd man out part of it. And in this, if we look at it, he says, hence there's a conflict and perpetual rubbing of shoulders among people in offices, in railway stations, in bus stations, on roads, in offices, and even during personal dialogue. First of all, we have to become a great person and not the small man that we have been. Okay. The greatness, he also says that the greatness of a genius in any walk of life is not the greatness that is comparable with satiety. There's no point in being contented that the small man who always feels the need to react, because the reaction is the answer of the lower personality and demand the requirement and external. Okay, all right. We are like anybody else in the world and anybody else is like us. Oh, okay. So if we were to look at these particular 5 lines, we can first of all identify the common thing that we are talking about, how to become great and how, conflicts are there in everyone's life. And us reacting to a conflict is of a lower personality, as not reacting is of a external thing. It's like a greater personality, and we need to become that part, that great part. Right. So I think the most generic statement of all of this is E. If we look at all this clearly, the most generic statement over here is nothing but E. So if the most generic statement is nothing but E, in that case, the next part can go to us being A. Okay. So we are like anybody else in the world and anybody else is like us. Hence, there's a conflict and perpetual rubbing of shoulders. Okay, even during personal dialogues. Okay. So if we are looking at this being our second statement, then we can say that B is our third statement. First of all, we'll have to be a great person. Oh, actually, no. A does not need to come here. We can go with E, B, D, and then A. Okay. If you're going with E, B, D, and then A, then it's going to be a perfect paragraph. And by that logic, the odd man out should be C. All right. Okay. Now, what about the last one? The passage is given here with 4 alternatives. So we have to find out the summary, right? So it's a good thing that almost all of us worry. Think of worry as a built-in alarm device. When it's used wisely, it alerts us to danger and prompts us to navigate our way through a maze of solutions to life's various problems. We need to think through our options when we are faced with problems, weighting the benefits and pitfalls of each alternative, and then come up with the best solution. Okay, fair enough. From there, we take action, which we hope solves the problem. Worry is then helpful, and if used at the right time, at the right level for resolving our difficulties. Like many things in life, however, too little worry or too much worry of it can be harmful. Okay, so basically, I can say that this entire paragraph is telling me that worrying is good for us. Okay, it basically guides us. Can I say that? Yes. So problems in life always get exaggerated by worry words. Again, very partial scope. Excess worry is harmful. Partial scope. Optimal worry. Again, partial scope. Okay. Worry guides us, timely alerts and directs one's path towards the right action. Yes. So B ideally captures the essence of the passage. So B will be our correct answer. All right. Right. So that's all the questions in this mock. I hope you understood the solutions to each one of them. Thank you.